Welcome to the Professional Services Pursuit, a podcast featuring expert advice and insights on the professional services industry. Hey everyone, I'm Brent. I'm back, and today I'm joined by Michael Speranza, the CEO of Kantata, to understand how AI is reshaping the software industry in real time. We'll hear from him on why that matters so much for professional services leaders navigating growth, delivery, and profitability right now. This is no longer a hypothetical. This shift is showing up in how buyers and consumers of vertical B2B SaaS platforms think, how deals are evaluated, and ultimately how companies are being valued. In this episode, we'll break down how the conversation is changing, what buyers expect now, and honestly, who's at risk and who is not. Because across the market, a new kind of tension is emerging. On the one hand, buyers are rethinking what's actually worth paying for. On the other, boards and investors are pushing leaders to prove their long-term value. So this should be an interesting conversation, regardless of which camp you fall into. We're going to reference a little bit of Michael's recent article, AI is Coming for SaaS, Just Not the Way You Think. And this perspective, I think, is going to be invaluable as it's extremely timely and top of mind right now. So, Michael, thank you for joining again. And it's going to be a great conversation, and we really value, and I think the listeners will value really your perspective as a CEO.
Great, Brent. It's great to talk to you today, and look forward to the discussion.
So we've got just the entire, I feel like, in any given day, the business press, X, all kinds of vignettes, wherever you consume your information, LinkedIn posts, just talking about the idea of the SaaS apocalypse. And let's just really start, because you have, a really unique vantage point, probably one of the best vantage points. And we're talking to you here in April of 2026, the CEO of a successful, profitable SaaS firm, and we want to dive right in. Let's start with what you're hearing across the market. On one camp, we've got our buyers, people who are considering, a platform like ours, a B2B SaaS, a vertical B2B SaaS, saying things like, why should we make this investment or buy this if it can be coded or vibe coded with AI? On the other side of the camp, this other tension you've got, boards and investors are pushing the leaders of these organizations, saying, "How are you future-proofing your value of the platform?" So you hear it from both ends, and how do you reconcile those pressures? What does it say about where SaaS is headed?
It's interesting. I think the seat I sit in, every week is a different week with the two vantage points you mentioned there, Brent, and for me, I think there's no doubt that the software and technology landscape is in the midst of a massive change. And I think with any transition, there'll be firms that embrace it and evolve, and I think there'll be others that struggle to find their way. And some of them will probably cease to exist. And I think what's different about this moment is really the rate of change. Right? And I think this is a point where when we get into what's possible, and I think what's making some folks uncomfortable lately is that the rate of change is extraordinary. And I think when folks see something that they have not encountered in the past before or have not encountered recently, it elicits a range of reactions and emotions from folks. And I think that's what we're going through right now. Just there's not a day or a week goes by where there isn't an extravagant story or an inflammatory story about how AI is changing the SaaS landscape. And, some of it could be, clickbait to get you to read the articles, obviously, but some of it is quite provocative and some of it's probably true. And you have to really discern that for yourself. But the two questions that I think there isn't a day that goes by where there isn't an inquiry on this, either from a recent customer interaction or an interaction with a prospect who's considering making a purchase, or from our board and investors. And I think you nailed it. One is, why should I invest and why now? And quite frankly, I think that question is really driven by them thinking, hey, can I build this? Right? Because every
Hmm.
day my feed is populated with another story from Anthropic saying that, you can build this for, pennies on the dollar, or why are you doing it that way? Why are you buying, what could be kind of a legacy model? And selfishly, I actually think this is really a wonderful question to be asking. And I think there are many things that you can build. And that might be the right approach for you to really automate repeatable, structured tasks,
Hmm.
simple workflows. If it's specific to your business, that might be the right answer. But I still think there's also really kind of a big divide where folks still need operational systems of record. And I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but and get into kind of why you would consider purchasing something. But this is kind of the age-old question. I think they're asking themselves why they should build it. I think it's an entirely appropriate question that they should ask themselves. The second part that you mentioned was really from like our board investors, and I think this is one where um, everybody has seen the articles recently on the private credit markets and how folks
Hmm.
are reacting, right? And I would put it into the reaction category. And I think you go back to folks living through something that they have not lived through before, and it elicits a reaction. And the reaction that we're seeing there is, withdrawals, and in some cases, a little bit of panic around folks or how they're thinking about the technology sector as a whole. And I can tell you the questions I'm getting from my board and from our investors is really just trying to have a patient understanding. I would say is the best way to put it, is around how we're investing, how customers are using our products, how deep are our relationships,
Hmm.
uh, what are the capabilities that we're bringing to market that, I don't want to use the word future proof, but really provide durable, lasting value to our customers. And what is our strategy to remain relevant to their business challenge? And, I think that is, those answers are evolving, right? Every week you get new feedback, new insights from customers that inform your product roadmap and inform the features that you're bringing to market. And I think I think any tech investor at this stage should really, work with their companies, be patient, help them understand and develop these answers, share experiences across portfolio companies and how they're approaching it. But know that this is a challenge that I think every company is facing, right? No one's immune to it. Everybody has to respond in some way to make sure that they're building a durable future for their customers.
Just for our listeners, we're referencing an article that you offered. AI is coming for SaaS, just not in the way
Mhm.
you think. And I really appreciate kind of your vantage point and the fact that you're running right at this. I think
Yeah.
there's probably a tranche of the business world that might be putting their heads in the sands, metaphorically saying, we'll wait this out. The dust will settle.
Mhm.
It's not the end of the world. It's not a brave new world. It's going to kind of cluster somewhere in the middle. And to your point, there is always every daily like a new artifact around this. I think all the analysts, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the investing market, they put out their lists of the most durable, those who have a moat, less likely to be disrupted, and then those that don't. And you've got a really great vantage point in the article, and I want listeners to be able to hear about this. But a two-part question. We'll start with
Yeah.
the first. Which SaaS companies, in your view, are at most risk right now?
Yeah, I think the ones most at risk are, I would kind of put them into two categories, actually. One is um, a company that lacks deep relationships or a deep understanding of their customers' businesses. And,
Hmm.
to use the simple way to think of this is, somebody who's providing or meeting a very horizontal need that doesn't necessitate deep understanding, doesn't necessitate deep knowledge of workflows of how their customers are operating, doesn't build up that equity in a relationship, and where your level of understanding doesn't really have to be that deep to provide
Hmm.
to provide value to the customer. Those are the ones that are going to be vulnerable. Um, the other category that I actually think is vulnerable is folks that are potentially pursuing the wrong path when it comes to how they're leveraging this technology. And I think, the entire market went through, a reaction, several years ago when this this technology came on the scene, everybody was racing to figure out how to use it. And I think I don't think I'm alone here when for us, like our approach as a vertical B2B SaaS organization is, built on deep expertise, understanding of our clients' needs. And we feel like that's the currency of the future. But we see a lot of folks really focus on kind of just reacting and responding and throwing technology and just trying to automate menial tasks and thinking that reducing human latency is going to lead to a lasting durable experience for their clients, and it won't. So I think there's a two-part danger here. I think one is if your product category is vulnerable and it just serves a horizontal use case, um, you you need to get to work to really figure out what the currency of the future is going to be for your business. And I think the other is the head fake, where people think they have an AI strategy and they think they're building something that's durable, but they're not. They're just building and automating the status quo, right, and reducing costs as low as they can. And at some point, that approach is going to expire, and they're going to have to innovate again. So I'd caution folks that that's my perspective. I don't think I'm alone there on a lot of those points, but really making sure that you have a durable long term strategy.
It's sort of like it's kind of a marketing analogy, and I think it's really relevant to B2B SaaS. It's kind of this idea. Say you've got a budget, right, and you want to acquire customers, but if you take that and you spread it too thin, there's this idea of spread thin, don't win, dominate a category, don't dabble, right?
Yeah.
And so that leads us to the second part of the question. And anyone in the listenership who's and listen, like there's a large part of our listenership that's the professional services organizations of B2B SaaS or SaaS companies, right? And we get this type of question all the time as clients, prospective partners are evaluating our value proposition. And many of them are technologists, many of them are technology companies, and they kind of stop and say, could we just build this? Before the Anthropic explosion and all the LLMs, build versus buy has always been on the table. Do you think this is an acceleration of this? You speak in the article about cost compression of code, but that's really kind of a nominal feature of B2B SaaS. But do you think this will continue to accelerate and large enterprises are really considering getting back into their own software business and building versus buying a platform?
I certainly think everybody should buy more selectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's entirely appropriate to ask that question. I think folks have been asking that question for decades. Should I build versus buy? And I think the market clearly voted in I would say a pretty overwhelming direction around vertical SaaS and buying something that's hyper specific to your needs. I still think that's going to be the case. Now, are there horizontal tech that is, call it of surface level value that folks may want to build? Absolutely. And I still think that, the capabilities are just vastly different than they exist than even 3 months ago. So I still think this is an entirely appropriate question to ask. And, when I think of the question around like build versus buy, I don't necessarily think of it around like a particular category, but what should I be buying, or what should I have confidence in buying now? And the things that I think folks should still have confidence in buying now, like you will still need some sort of operational system of record, right? If you're going to have a meaningful, fruitful, durable business model as a company, data is going to be more important than ever. Like you need to access, acquire, store, index your data, gather your data. So if you're investing in those operational systems of records, ERPs, operating platforms, like those are things that are going to be fundamental no matter which course this takes. And like step one, I think, is gather your data, control your data, and then you can figure out how to use it and determine it. So to me, I think it's those sorts of categories where you would still make a confident decision that regardless of what the long-term landscape looks like in terms of AI and who evolves fastest and who's the fittest. Like as a business, it is still like a business critical issue to own and control your data. Beyond that, then I think it's making sure that you understand that there's a strong value quotient for what you're purchasing. It's like more so than ever, like the quantitative result that you're going to deliver from deploying a piece of software. And for me, I think buying the software is just one component of it, right? If you have to deploy it, you have to operationalize it, you have to use it. And for me, I think I'd be putting my money into the things that have big bets and big payoffs, right? The market is going to evolve rapidly at the edges, right? There isn't a day that goes by that I don't get inquiries about new marketing tools or new demand generation tools. I think that there's probably 10 a day that are coming out. And for those sorts of tertiary tools at the edge, I would exercise caution, right? And just really understand kind of how durable those things are. That market's going to move incredibly quickly, and your ability to derive a meaningful payback or use of a software like that is probably questionable in this stage.
To follow on the build versus buy, and in that equation, before we get into kind of our train here, which will kind of resolve with actually how to defend value and be one that survives and then ultimately thrives in the market. A lot of the AI conversation on the periphery, and even if you're even just a nascent sort of consumer or periphery consumer of this kind of information, it's really around, can AI build software? And I guess the short answer is, in many cases, yes. But for SaaS leaders, the real question seems, what systems and tools does the market need to operate, differentiate, and create value in an AI-driven market? And that's, I think, what you're getting at there. So if you could summarize that maybe in just like a couple of bullets, what do you think is the real conversation that internally kind of SaaS leaders should be thinking about as they think about things like roadmap and how to be durable?
Yeah, so I think it's all about defining your currency of the future, right? And it's not the product, right? If you find yourself saying, okay, what differentiates your company? And it's, well, we've invested a decade in building this product over time. Like, that's not the answer. Like, so number one, I'd like really wrestle with that problem and be honest about it and step back and say, okay, what is the currency of the future? And in many cases, I think the currency of the future is context that is built upon information. Like, this is, these models don't live, don't exist, don't run, don't operate unless they can learn you're feeding it the right context. And I think our CTO had a really kind of poignant way of positioning this recently, where it was, and it was a relationship to kind of, agents and vehicles and cars, and like, agents are the car and context is the map. And I think, right now, the cars are going 100 miles per hour in the dark without a map. And to me, like, context is the differentiating element of the future. So that is certainly our approach, and to make sure that we are building up those data models, building up the knowledge graphs around a vertical industry expertise around what we do for our customers, and then using that context as something that's going to differentiate us into the future. And if you lack that information, if you lack that knowledge, if you don't have the war chest of data or information to help you build that context around your industry that's important to your customer, that would be a warning sign, right? I would start to really think deeply about what your currency of the future is, right? And obviously, it's not the product, it's not the code. I think everybody has proven that these models can write plenty of code quickly. How that code actually operates is an entirely different story. And does that code actually provide value to your business? And it can't do that without context.
So let's transition now into that value. So let's presume, and you've acknowledged I've acknowledged. I mean, we've both seen and experienced kind of AI generated code and technology, and let's presume that's going to continue, and that's a piece of the business when you're constructing a vertical B2B SaaS company. But let's say, okay, we no longer need maybe the velocity of code has now increased, and let's presume the quality is good enough, and AI has, to a degree, commoditized that function. Where do SaaS leaders start to create and defend value? And you mentioned that, like, this is a perfect tee up of your last comment about like 20-year investment in legacy code bases in the enterprise is not the answer. So to play off that, go a little deeper, I think, in that this idea of context.
Yeah, so I think context starts from data. Quite honestly, I think if you have a deep relationship with your customers and that what you do is important for them, there's going to be a war chest of information, data, and insights that is hopefully embedded in your product or however your customers are using your product that allows you to build this context map for the future about how they're operating. So to me, that's the first point. I think that really goes deep there, and making sure that you have trust with your customers. Like, I think this is a journey. Like, no one knows the answer yet, and I think as much as customers want to embark on this mission, I also think they're afraid of making a mistake. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You've got obviously an arms race when it comes to what direction folks are moving in, who's going to be fastest, who's going to win, who's going to survive, what ends up being the right answer. And, I've certainly seen many, many customers, quite frankly, just be a little bit patient and almost be more fearful of like committing too soon, committing too soon to a particular approach or a particular model or a particular provider, and wanting to have optionality. And I think that's also an incredibly wise decision. So, for us, it's making sure that one, we've got context and information, that I've got trust with the vendor, because I think at the end of the day, whoever you're working with, like the key to context, I believe, is a tenured relationship, having data, having them truly understand your business, right? If your provider doesn't understand your business, how are they ever going to deliver you something that is like durable and meaningful in the future? And the last piece for me is all about making sure that you believe in their AI strategy, right? And it may not deliver what you want in the time you want. You may want some things quicker than what they're able to deliver, but like marrying up the fact that they have trust, context, and that you have a deep understanding of their AI strategy, and that you have a vote when it comes to what their strategy is. Because guess what? Their AI strategy is going to change. Guarantee. That's the only thing, is that they have to make sure that they're remaining adaptable in their strategy. If someone is too resolute about it, that would be a warning sign for me.
We were talking about this, and you were sharing some of the POV on the article that you wrote, and there's been several, I think, cogent points of view coming out. You made a reference to the private equity markets and the LPs and the pressure from boards, but Vista came up with, I thought, a good summary of this, saying something like, think of a company like a home. And in this analogy, enterprise software is not the furniture. It's the foundation and systems of the home that make everything function. It's the electrical system, plumbing, and security that makes a home habitable. Remove the foundation and operations don't slow down, they stop. So tying into your, I think, this resounding theme of deep credibility, context, trust, and deep understanding of the client's business.
I thought that was a great article. Or a great summary of position on the market. And I think they're absolutely right with the foundational element of software, but like kind of what I refer to like that deep software system of record type foundation, where like no matter what, you're going to need data to operate your environment. And that's where I would like invest confidently, invest comfortably, like, and perhaps even accelerate your investments. If you don't have control of your environment today, then you're going to be outmaneuvered by competitors. Like that's a fact. And every piece of AI technology that you're using at some point relies on consuming this information, interpreting this information, and applying it to your business. If the information doesn't exist in an easy way that's consumable by these models, then you're gonna get outmaneuvered. That's the honest truth. And I've seen firms hesitate to invest in that software, and I think that's the wrong decision. That's one area where I would confidently invest. And the AI that's going to come later on top of that, like, is just going to create another explosive wave of capability that you don't have today. But without those foundations, it's going to be very, very hard for folks to survive. Quite honestly.
As we wrap here, this has been fantastic. I mean, just the point of view and the fact that you're living this as a CEO of a vertical B2B SaaS platform, and these are all extremely timely, very prescient sort of insights here. But the bottom line, right? I mean, if you're in professional services within a B2B SaaS company, if you're on the board, if you're in product, and you're really grappling with kind of synthesizing all this that's coming at the industry, what really survives? What actually survives in this market dynamic?
Yeah, so I mean, things that survive. I think it's the firms that recognize that the currency of the future is all about context and deep knowledge of the customer's environment. Like, and to me, that is a huge vote on vertical focus, industry focus, and specialization. That's number one. Number two, back to like that somebody who's got a adaptable AI strategy for the future. Like, I think this is a market that is changing rapidly, and anyone that sits here and says they have all the answers is delusional. You don't, right? You have to be on top of it. You have to consume the information as it's coming at you and remain adaptable, right? With your AI strategy, how you're building it, and really build the third leg of the stool, which is the trust with your customer. At the end of the day, I think these are, in most cases, when folks are buying enterprise software products, these are long tenured relationships, right? You look at the average lifespan of an enterprise software relationship is over 6 years, right? These are not things that evolve overnight rapidly, and I think customers are going to have some level of patience, especially for providers that are providing deep workflow knowledge, deep expertise to them, for them to get it right. And I think for them to get it right requires a trusting, collaborative relationship with the customer. And I encourage everybody to think about those three pillars and make sure that you're being honest with yourselves and with your firm about how you're investing, where you're investing, and are you really solving the lasting issue for your customers. I think the other kind of cautionary note for me that I've noticed is everybody just kind of running to this false positive narrative about agents and automation, and it's the flavor of the day. But at the end of the day, that's not going to deliver lasting value to a client. So if that's what you're focused on, like, make sure you pause and reassess and continue to validate with your customers.
That's outstanding, and appreciate that succinct wrap up and summary. And for our listeners, a lot of what we've been discussing, you can obviously, if you've made it this far in the pod, hit repeat, replay. But Michael's authored an article that'll be available on our website. We'll put the link in the show notes. But the title is AI coming for SaaS, just not the way you think? A B2B SaaS CEO's perspective on the SaaS apocalypse. So we'll put the link there. It'll be on our website shortly. Michael, appreciate the article. First of all, it's fantastic. And then the time you've shared with us today, and look forward to connecting in the future. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you, Brent.
As always, thank you for listening. If you have any follow-up questions for myself or Michael, we would love to hear them. Send us an email at podcast@kantata.com. We would be happy to keep the conversation going. If you enjoyed this podcast, let us know by giving the show a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform and leaving a comment. If you haven't already subscribed to the show, you can do so anywhere you get podcasts, on any podcast app. And to learn more about the power of Kantata's purpose-built technology, go to kantata.com. Thanks again for listening.